I'd like to begin our meeting by welcoming everyone in attendance. Thank you for joining us. Whoa. Sorry about that. Are we good now?
We're good.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. For the record, it is Tuesday, September 17th. It's 3:32. We'll start with roll call attendance. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Mylum?
Here.
Councilmember Burnt?
Here.
Councilmember Little Roberts?
Here.
Councilmember Cavanagh?
Here.
Mayor DeVeard?
Here.
Sorry, I'm getting here. Commissioner Lasciando? Am I correct? Okay. Commissioner Visser is not here. Commissioner Kenyon?
Mr. Kenyon's here. Thank you. So you did the roll call for us.
Yes.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you. And I do want to start out our agenda has the discussion topics. I will ask in a moment for approval of the agenda. It was not too long ago, I met with Commissioner Kenyon about coordinating our growth plans. This is something that we did a number of years ago and working in collaboration with the county and our surrounding cities. And she called a meeting that 3 cities were in attendance at. It's nice to see that someone with an agenda actually follows it, so thank you for that.
And kudos also to Commissioner Lacciando for locking arms and right there with me every step of the way.
That's awesome. We appreciate you being here and starting a dialogue with the mayor and city council. We greatly appreciate it, greatly. Okay, council, I do want to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Cavanagh.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. Okay, our first item under discussion topics is an update on our Meridian Comprehensive Plan. I will turn this over to Caleb. As he makes his way up to the podium, we did have a dinner last night as a debrief with the committee, the steering committee that has been working on this 14-month process. So I want to first give my kudos to staff. This has been a very comprehensive community outreach, and I did want our county commissioners that we submit this plan for your approval as well. And I think it's important you know the steps that have been taken to do community outreach, to involve our public members, and the steady work of our steering committee. They have met every week for the last 14 months. That's pretty incredible, and we appreciate that the county had a representative as well on that steering committee. So thank you for the representative you lent to us, for his participation, and I'll turn this over to Caleb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, commission members. I should just let you keep going, Mayor. That was pretty good, and you touched on some of the things Brian and I were going to talk about.
I don't want to take away your thunder.
No. So we do want to provide you an update. As the council knows, and the commissioners may or may not know, you have had representation on this process, throughout this process. Mitra started out and then handed the baton to David here in the last quarter or so. And like the mayor said, we've had 14 steering committee meetings, but we meet in between those two and talk technicalities outside of those steering committee meetings and continue to coordinate some of the things we'll talk about and what shows up in the current draft of the comprehensive plan. So in those discussions, we thought it'd be appropriate to bring everybody up to speed on where we're at in that process. So I know there's only 2 items on your agenda, but they're pretty weighty items. We will try to do this as quickly as possible and still cover all the pertinent information. Please feel free to interrupt if need be. So the current plan, and this is mainly for folks in the audience, I think most everyone kind of understands what a comprehensive plan is, but maybe just a little bit of background. It is the visioning document for the city, how we intend to grow and develop over generally a 20 to 25 year time period. Meridian has grown quite rapidly since the current comp plan was adopted, or at least most of the policies that were in the current plan was adopted. So the city council about 18 months ago directed staff to accelerate what we typically do every 10 years or so, to move that up a couple of years and really go out to the community and understand who the people that are living and working here now, what their vision is for our community. So that's what we've done, again, over the past 16, 18 months. The city of Meridian, in our current document, and we envision this playing forward post-adoption of a new plan, really has those forward-looking vision statements into the body of the comprehensive plan and the things that talk about who we are as a community and what we call our existing conditions report. So that has our demographic information, how many police stations we have, or police officers and fire stations, parks, those types of things that are kind of backwards looking. And then the meat of the plan is, again, the things that drive where we want to go as a community into the future. So that process, the city did hire a consultant to help us with this, Logan Simpson, that's out of Fort Collins. They also had some subcommittee members, so Leland Associates, and then Kittleson, who has some folks here in their Boise office to look at transportation corridor analysis. A lot of what they did, what Logan Simpson helped us with, was public involvement and a website that was developed and used throughout the process. Not only did they help track those comments and respond and draft the plan, but they also helped set up the steering committee agendas, came to maybe 2/3 of those, and facilitated those discussions. We heard some comments last night in our dinner, kind of wrap up from the steering committee, how they really appreciated, the members really appreciated having that point of contact and keeping us on schedule and on track with those agendas. The steering committee knew what they were to accomplish in the next month, what their goals were to keep us on this timeline that had been established. So they were great at facilitating and setting up those agendas. Steering committee, again, the mayor's mentioned, there's some points on the slide here with 22 members. I will also note we do have a handful, or at least a few of them in the audience tonight, so thank you for your service and attending this afternoon.
I'm sorry. First, for the record, Mr. Visser, Commissioner Visser joined us, and I would like anyone that was on the steering committee, if you'd raise your hand. Okay, a great number of them. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
And it really was that steering committee makeup, while there was varied backgrounds and expertise and experiences, and some folks that were newer members of the community and some that were lifelong residents. It was a great mix of professional experience and residents and realtors and just everybody. I mean, part of the conversation, and we don't need to rehash everything we talked about last month or through that process, but just, again, a variety of perspectives and the passion, though, that everybody had for our community to want to move it forward into the next generations it was exciting. So school district was also there, and Ada County Highway District. I think those are two key critical pieces, along with county and other stakeholders. But they were also there. I don't know if Carl raised his hand or not there, but he represented Compass in that process. We took some of those members then and broke out into some focus groups, and this is where we got a little more technical in some of those elements that we were hearing from our community and some of the early phases that were most important. Community design, economic development, housing, and transportation. So again, they dug in a little bit deeper, had a series. I think most of those groups met 3, maybe one of them 4 times to really get into some more of those details. They had a packet, and again, some things that they were really charged with looking at policies for the city going forward. The draft plan that was submitted last week for the Planning and Zoning Commission's consideration really is the steering committee's recommended plan that is based on our community's input. So that's what we'll be going through that public hearing process here next month. Public outreach, we tried. We really did, and I think we're pretty successful. We tried to get the word out. We worked with our communications folks in the mayor's office to tweet about it, put it on Facebook and Nextdoor and in newsletters and on our website and everywhere we could. We went to, I don't know, Brian, off the top of your head, I don't know how many events, 20 events maybe, and in parks all last summer, into this summer. Try to go where the people were at so we could engage with them, point them to the website if they couldn't make it out. But we really did try to understand from people what their values were, what their vision for the community is, and then give them some choices and opportunities, and really kind of understand that again as we translate that into some policies and a draft plan. I will just point out, I mean, the council was great in the early phases saying, staff, you need to do this, go hire a consultant and go. And we did have Trey, Councilman Burnt, I saw him raise his hand. He has been an ex officio member on the steering committee this last quarter. But aside from that, the council has largely been non-involved in this. This is a community-driven plan that isn't, the council members or the mayor saying, boy, this better be in the plan. And I'll even, to Councilman Burnt's, he hasn't really said that either in this. Hey, boy, that plan better include this. So it really is our community members' plan as best we can tell thus far. So we try to go out to the public quite a bit. Timeline, I don't know that I'll spend a whole bunch of time on this slide. I will just point out, again, we did values first and then vision, and that concluded with, in November of 2018, a vision document. So this document includes just kind of what we heard through the first couple phases of plan development. It's, it's a little more, it's not policy, it's a little more pie in the sky, if you will, but it's things we heard from folks. I think they're achievable, so maybe it's not pie in the sky, but just some word clouds, maybe that's what I was thinking of sky. But this document that really says, where do we want to go as a community? And then we're coming up to the finish line here. October 17th is actually when the first public hearing before our Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled.
Caleb?
Yeah.
The document you just showed, if you can email that to the county, we can get it to the commissioners so you can see those.
Mm-hmm. So again, I didn't spend much time on the timeline, but since May of 2017, we've been going, and our directive was to basically have it done by the end of this year, because that's my elected officials now, and that will change beginning in January. So we had that direction. My Meridian vision, again, here's that document. That's a lot of what I'll email to you all are these 5 themes that came about through that, and these all of those elements then that you see at the bottom of this slide are the state required elements that each comprehensive plan address. So we've housed those in each one of these themes. All the elements are considered that the state requires, and they fit nicely into one of those themes. Although some of them kind of cross over. Themes like pathways, it can be in connected, and it can also be in livable, because it's part of our park system too. So it's a little bit of that, but for the most part, we think it's organized well and pretty understandable for the public. But I guess time will tell, and public will tell us how we did with some of that. So I'm going to let Brian, who, just kudos to Brian. He's been our de facto, I shouldn't say de facto, unofficial project manager. He's really kept this thing on track along with Logan Simpson, making sure we stay on task and moving this project forward. So thank you, Brian.
One minor note on the previous slide, the 17 elements that are required under the state guidance that aren't on that list are addressed in the ECR, which Caleb previously mentioned, the existing conditions report. So airports, for example, which we don't have and we don't want one, and the ECR says that.
Want to come here?
No. So one of the things we're doing with the new plan is a new format. We will, of course, have the required PDF because we need to have that sort of record copy, and some people just like to print it off. But the thing we're doing that's different and new and modernizing is a web-based version of that plan. It's entirely live text, live images, live GIS. It works on a phone, it works on a tablet, it works on a computer, any format you want to use it on. I feel like it's going to be pretty engaging. Policies are interactive. You can search by them, sort by them, look by chapter. You can really play with it that way if you're looking for something. And we're honestly quite excited about it. So that's the big thing with the new format. Another thing that we're doing with the new plan, and while we have our Board of County Commissioners here, is some changes to the area of city impact. The notable one here you see on your screen relates to our southern boundary with CUNA. Since the 90s, we've had some push and pull down there, and we hope with this new plan that we'll have kind of put that to rest and move past it. So you can expect a concurrent application with the city of CUNA to the county after we adopt the plan for you to adopt it as well. So we really hope that will be finished. I guess one other note there is we do have some smaller changes kind of around the other edges with Boise. Most notably, we have worked with them to identify those and draw those.
So one of the tools we asked the consultant team to develop for us, and this won't be part of our comprehensive plan, but it'll help us understand a little bit better maybe the timing and implementation of our comprehensive plan, is what we call a service impact tool. So it took a lot of the infrastructure, either planned or existing infrastructure, and mapped it out so you could see on a parcel by parcel basis in our area of city impact the readiness of any one parcel to develop. I'm not going to list all the things that this will basically tell you are available or adjacent to, but things like pathways, water, sewer, schools, and roads. But again, it's not comprehensive, so it doesn't say, power loads or electricity, how close that is, or your irrigation water or those types of things. But it does help the city at least understand where development maybe should happen or could happen, because those things that make that next development happen are either right there or pretty close. So you can kind of see in a heat map then, yeah, there's schools close by, the roads are improved, and you got sewer and water in front of the property. Look for any undeveloped or underdeveloped properties in this general vicinity to develop soon. And we should point this out because this was a point at our steering committee meetings. It doesn't help the council or elected officials, appointed officials, determine if a project is appropriate or not for our community. Again, it's meant just to share information and data about where those services are, or if they're in, for example, ACHD's 5-year work plan, hey, that road is planned to be widened in the next 2 or 3 years. So maybe it is okay to approve this project because there is, relief for that roadway coming or things like that. Or we have in our CIP as a city to build a new park there or those types of things. I do want to use the last 2 bullets here. It could help the city define where it may grow next and where those opportunities exist. One of the things we heard from the public going out again to parks and these other things was, I don't know that too many people use the word chaos, but there's just a lot of development happening everywhere all the time, it feels like, in Meridian, and to some degree that's true. So we really took that to heart and thought, well, let's have a conversation then with our council about strategically growing in areas where, again, where response times for fire and police are adequate, where we have parks, where we have school capacities, those types of things. We haven't taken it to that degree, but this tool with some tweaks could help you define an area then and say, this is where we should grow next, and grow that out to a certain percentage, and then grow to this area next. So those are some of the future conversations we're likely to have. Again, this tool doesn't get you there, but it can help inform some of those conversations. And we're having some similar conversations countywide with other cities in the county about how, we don't really like to use the term smart growth, but strategically growing. Again, let's do this so we're not stretching all of our resources in different directions simultaneously. Let's try to maybe even develop incentives. I know that sounds a little crazy with how much we're growing now, but incentivize developing in these areas, and maybe some disincentives in other areas that we aren't necessarily so excited for those areas to grow. So more to come on that, but that's one of the things that, again, we heard from the community. And then in the similar vein, coordinating those service needs with not only the county, but with ACHD and the schools. Hey, if we all get on the same page and say, let's grow over here, well, can you build your next school over there? Can you widen the roads over there? We're looking to grow and extend our services, sewer and water, et cetera, out there. So again, that's not part of the plan necessarily, but that's some of the things that there's some policy statements that say explore those types of opportunities.
Quick question, thank you. Just sort of in stark relief here, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but could you give me a flavor of how many enclaves you have within Meridian city limits?
Commissioner, I didn't do a count. There are several, though. Do you have an idea, Brian, what the number is? I mean, there's whole subdivisions that are enclaves surrounded by city limits in Meridian.
Caleb, I think we did a presentation to the county commissioners a couple of years ago that we could get you that PowerPoint presentation. It shows you a lot of that information and some of the challenges that we've had too.
Thank you.
But I remember it now.
Mr. Burnt?
And to clarify, for those who weren't part of this steering committee, this is a document, or this is a tool that will be used internally only. It's not something that someone can log on to and see on the internet, or it's available for developers or builders or customers.
Correct, Madam Mayor, Councilman Burt. Yeah, we envision using this essentially for council members. The table that you see in your staff reports now would essentially have this same information. We just put a pretty picture up here, but essentially it will tell you how far your sewer line is away, or how far your water is, what the nearest park is, what the nearest school capacity, schools are with their capacity and those types of things. So, correct, it's an internal tool, although some of that information will be shared externally. So, yeah, it's available. Any other questions on this tool?
Commissioner Kenyon?
Madam Chair, or Madam Mayor, thank you. Is there a fiscal component to this?
So, good question, Madam Mayor, Commissioner. So, no, not directly anyways. We have worked with our finance department in looking at fiscal impact of approving certain types of development, looking at densities, and again, what would those services be in the near term and in the long term. This does not tell you, although we get from the county values of property, does not tell you what you can anticipate as far as revenue or expenditures. But you could build some of those things into this.
And Commissioner, I believe that the county is working on such a tool, and we're excited to see what that is and how we can play a part in it. I think it will be useful for all of us.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
Caleb, back to the service impact tool. I'm curious, is there a reason why we aren't making this available to the public? Is it a technological limitation, or is there another reason why I don't feel like that's our intent, to keep the door
No.
shut to the public, and so I'm just trying to wrap my head around as to why they wouldn't be able to access it.
Mayor, Councilman Kevener. So the big reason there is a lot of the information in there can't be shown by state code. So address information, property information, that's limited. The other thing is it runs on our servers using the full load of all that data, and we just can't make it available.
Thank you.
And I should clarify, I mean, we can share this type of information. You just, as a public, can't log in and look at this, like in real time, the same information that we can look at and manipulate and interpret. So it's still available, but it's not to the same degree staff has it available.
Madam Mayor, and Caleb, I think that we were getting to the same place. I just want to make sure that we were clarifying. It wasn't a case of, sorry, public, you're not allowed to see this. There are many extenuating circumstances, and the bulk of the information that's shared in this tool, the public would have ready access
Right.
and availability. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next steps, and I've already mentioned this, but our Planning and Zoning Commission hearing is scheduled for October 17th. We envision that then moving on to a city council hearing shortly thereafter. And then we get to work. I mean, this has been work. There's been some fun times in there too, but we've been busy. But implementation is going to be, right? You don't build a plan and then throw it up on the shelf. You got to work the plan, and so we'll be getting to work and working the plan over the next several years. So, and that includes updating other plans. Brian mentioned we're renegotiating our Title IX agreement with the county, some of the area of city impact changes, but just that you recognize this plan as well. And then, like I said, prioritization over those policies and looking at specific area plans, reviewing our code, maybe even some of the county code changes that help us get to where we'd like to be as a community. So I think, do you have anything else, Brian? So that's what we had on our new comprehensive plan, and we'll stand for any questions.
Hey, commission or council, any questions?
Okay, Awesome, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner Visser.
Thank you, Mayor. Caleb, you stated in your presentation a little earlier that you're going to use incentives and decentives. Could you go into that in a little bit of detail or possibly give us an illustration of that?
Yeah, that was in the context, Madam Mayor, Commissioner Visser. Yeah, that was in the context of potentially establishing areas where we would encourage growth or development to occur, and where we aren't quite ready to see growth and development occur, carrots and sticks, incentives, disincentives, and we haven't developed them. I don't know what that even looks like. We've got to, there's some state code there. We got to be careful with impact fees. We can't use those types of tools. And so it may be one or the other. It may just be incentives. Maybe it's something we do through our review process that says, hey, we can fast track you if you grow in this area because we really want that infill to happen. I don't really know what disincentives look like. Just quite frankly, we've talked about that even in our downtown. What can we do to incentivize growth where we want to see it happen? And it's something we've struggled with. Developing a list of what is something that, so I don't know exactly where that goes, but I use that just to kind of show what can we do. If we're going to draw these areas, say we want to grow there, well, that's all fine and good, but unless you can actually attract people there or detract developers there, it doesn't do any good to say, yeah, we'd prefer it, but we don't bring anything to the table to partner with you. So that's kind of TBD on where that will go. TBD.
Any other questions? Thank you so
thank you.
much for your presentation. We appreciate your work. Okay, item 2B is through the county presentation on best practices, emerging trends, et cetera. Good evening. If you'll please state your name, and you can pull those together or pick one or the other or whatever you would like.
That way it carries my voice better, especially with my Indian accent. Good afternoon, Madam
Good afternoon.
Mayor, members of the Meridian City Council, Madam Chair, members of Ada County Board. Yes, this presentation looks a little different than what you may have seen, and that is because we are trying to simplify the message a little bit for people that are viewing it online. So please pardon me for changing a little bit of the content here and there, but the content is exactly the same. The look is a little different. So my name is Mitra Mehta Cooper, and I'm the Strategic Planning Manager with Ada County. And with me today is David Corcoran. He is the Community and Regional Planner, as well as for Ada County, as well as Carl Miller, who is Principal Planner at Compass. And so you heard from Meridian City staff how wonderful they have done on the comprehensive plan that they are updating currently. And some of the struggles that they went through in managing growth, in making sure that the growth is happening in a more strategic manner where services are available. So what we want to do today is broaden that discussion a little bit to first Ada County, and then in Carl's presentation, that presentation will be broadened to Treasure Valley a little bit. So we want to talk about what we believe, why we need to talk about growth, because we feel that growth is going to occur. I think some of your earlier steering committee meetings, people talked about it, that it's inevitable. We live in an open society, and people are going to have kids and move in, and things would happen, growth will happen. We need to be just prepared to manage it in a strategic manner. So I'm going to go over that a little bit. After me, David will talk about where are we now? Where is Ada County now when it comes to our service challenges and our service portfolio? And what should we do to get ahead of that rather than stay behind and always be reactive in our approach to growth? Next, Carl, as I mentioned, Compass staff, they've done an excellent job in educating this region about growth. He's going to talk about how they are doing, what new things they are doing as part of their Communities in Motion process in 2050 that's going to take it to the next level for our region. And then, of course, if you so elect, there'll be public comments after that. So why are we here? why are people moving to Ada County, or why is there such a draw to Ada County? We believe that there is a quality of life in Ada County that is very unique, and people are drawn here. And one of the major component of that quality of life is actually our open spaces. Half of Ada County is in federal and state open spaces that encompasses our foothills, our greenbelt, everything that we all cherish about this area. And also, more than 8,000 acres in Ada County are dedicated for active recreation. That's something, that makes it exciting place to live, that defines quality of life. The second thing that makes Ada County so lucrative for people to live in is its safe environment to raise families. And Ada County, and I'm sure city, plays a huge role in making sure that safety and that safe feeling is ensured through a series of employees that cities provide, as well as the county provides. And you can see our sheriff employs more than 700 people as of today. EMS, similarly, 150 or so. This is all defines the quality of life. And sometimes we fail to recognize the juvenile courts and services are important piece of all this. And let's not forget the coroner, which is also very important part of all of our life cycles and safety. And the last piece that defines our quality of life in our mind is our housing options. You can live in a 10-story condo in downtown Boise, and you can live on a ranchette in Star or Cuna, and everything is within half an hour distance from each other. And that makes it such a wonderful region. From planner's perspective, this is what we look for. And underlying all this are the roads. We will not be able to serve our communities if our roads were clogged up. We will not be able to go from our home in Star to work in downtown Boise if our roads were clogged up. We will not be able to enjoy our open spaces as much as we do if our roads were clogged up. And you can imagine how the residents of Ada County feels as they're experiencing the growth that we have experienced in the recent years. Our roads, as I mentioned, are getting fairly busy, and our open spaces are getting chopped up into subdivisions interspersed with agriculture and open space uses in between. And that is really creating a unique challenge for Ada County. And we all know by now that our state's legislation on area of impact and annexations are such that sometimes it is really challenging to decide where the growth is going to be. The location and timing of growth is really challenging for us as a region to define, and that's where I think some of our service provision challenges that we will be discussing later comes into play. So, Mayor Tammy, you were absolutely right. Compass has issued an RFP for fiscal impact analysis at the request of Ada County Board and many of its member agencies. We would want to look at the overall service portfolio of the entire region. What is it today and what is it going to be in the future? And how we can pay for it. Do we have a deficit as a region, or do we have surplus to pay for these services? So we are very happy that Compass is working with our partnering agencies in development of fiscal impact analysis. In addition to that, Ada County commissioners recognize what I think Caleb and Brian outlined for your comp plan. Fiscal impact analysis or the service impact tool is not be all end all. We need to take the growth discussion to the next level after that fiscal impact analysis is available. And Ada County Commission has committed significant resources in fiscal year 20 to further that goal, allowing us a couple of additional positions so I can do my job in a more effective manner, as well as some budget to make sure that we can continue these growth conversations. We are meeting with every city in this region and making sure that we are having these one-on-one dialogues with them and understanding what challenges they are facing when it comes to growth and how we can facilitate that as part of this growth conversation. And to take it to the next level, on October 16th, I'm sure some of you may have received the invitations and some of you may be receiving soon, We are going to have a coordinated growth conversation where we have invited regions leaders, business, development community, elected officials, state legislatures, and so forth, to have a meaningful conversation and say, let's look at what we are doing and let's see where we need to go going forward to manage this growth in a fiscally responsible manner. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to David, who is going to talk about our realities when it comes to fiscal realities of service provision. And
Thank you, David, and let the record note that Mr. Palmer has joined us.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Council members. David Corcoran, Community and Regional Planner with Ada County here just to talk briefly about the county's facilities and how growth has kind of impacted that process. So what you've got in front of you on the screen there is a map of county facilities, where they're located right now. You can see they tend to be mostly located more towards sort of where Ada County kind of used to have most of its development and is moving to the west at a pace. But one thing that's interesting to me is some of the services that the county actually provides to everybody, including city residents. So, when you call 911, that actually goes to the county, no matter where you are within Ada County, what city you're in. The county provides all the driver's licensing. We provide sheriff patrols, even in the incorporated cities with their own police departments. We run the ambulance. We do weed, pest, and mosquito abatement. We're responsible for the entire court system, basically. We run the FACES Crisis Center, the county elections, as Mitchell mentioned, the county coroner, as well as the clerk assessor, and even the landfill for the county is all provided by the county, no matter which.
Don't forget the fair. You missed the fair.
And the fair. Most importantly, the county fair.
And I just want to remind everyone in the room that city residents are county residents, so
Yes.
there's no difference.
And county residents or city residents?
No, they're not. They just use city services.
Right, so where are we at right now? So I'll walk you through this map that should also be on your screen here. What this shows is sort of how the county's grown over the last 20 years. The purple number represents the current 2019 estimated population of every city in Ada County. The orange shows when Compass did their CIM process, what they initially expected the population would look like in 2040. The black shows where we are actually right now, where we expect the population to be in 2040. You can see a big difference there. So Meridians have obviously grown quite a bit faster than was expected. CUNA's already blown past where we expected them to be in 2040, and so their population projection has almost doubled in that time. But what's really interesting is the green at the bottom, which is the comprehensive plan build-out population. So, every city in the county and the county have a comprehensive plan that allocates some land use to every single inch of dirt in the county, right? And so if you were to fill all of that up with the estimated population of each of those zones or designations, what you would end up with is that our comprehensive plans are actually speculating a population of about 1.5 million people. So even though we have 700,000 right now, we're almost planning in a way that or from a land use perspective, that would accommodate 1.4 million. And just to show that in a table form, you can see we're growing faster than we had initially expected. But what does that mean, right? So these 6 maps here, Compass put together as part of the CIM process. And the top row there is population, the bottom row is employment density. The maps on the left show back in 2010, this is what we expected the density situation to look like. In the middle shows when Compass initially did the CIM 2040 process, that was kind of how they expected growth to occur between 2012 and 2040. The map on the right shows what would happen if we built out every comprehensive plan to its fullest extent. So you can see some pretty significant differences between that middle and the right column in terms of where density is. As the 2040 growth forecasts were developed, they assumed a certain level of density, and then the comprehensive plan build-outs assume something a little bit different. Compass definitely takes into account the comprehensive plans. It's just the development that's actually occurred has looked a little bit different than maybe initially speculated. That impacts county services, though, right? So as Mitchell had mentioned, we have, right now, we've got about 1,800 employees. We estimate that in order to accommodate the sort of 2040 build-out projection, we would need about $320 million in county facility investment to get to that 2040 population projection and that 2040 growth. If we end up with the comprehensive plans all the way built out and we have 1.5 million people in Ada County, to get from here to there and provide the same level of service, we estimate would cost around $690 million. Now, some of these services are growth dependent, right? You know, no matter where growth happens in the county, you're going to need roughly the same number of coroners, right? It has no impact on where exactly within the county the development happens. But for the sheriff and the EMS, especially, there's kind of some impact here, right? So the more the development is less dense and it happens in a way that is sort of scattered, that's potentially more sheriff resources, more ambulance resources that would need to come out. And that potentially impacts where driver's license facilities need to go, how many patrols need to go out, and various things of that nature. So what should we do about all this? This is our current regional planning process. And so you can see what we've got right now is the city and county land use plans. They're developed, and that informs Compass as they go through the hard work of putting together these growth projections, and then they also calculate out the land use projections if, you know, the comprehensive plans were built out. These are happening at a slightly different pace. But functionally, what's happening is that the county makes its facilities planning decisions, and ACHD actually determines its capital improvements plan based on what is expected to happen in 2040, since that's the best we have in terms of immediate growth, right? The land use plans may speculate, you know, they're planning for a potential of 1.5 million people, something that's, you know, far later than 2040. And I just want to turn over to Gallatin County, Montana real quick, which is where Bozeman is. They, a few years ago, experienced similar growth pressures to what we're seeing now. They're a much smaller county, but similar idea. And they went through and they looked at a few different land use scenarios, right? So they said, okay, we can keep doing what we're doing, which is basically, you know, allowing almost anything to happen, or we can start to look at some different options for development. And what they found actually was that they could cut their road and sheriff budgets in more than half if they, you know, went with a slightly different development scenario. So, you know, Bozeman is not Ada County, right? Ada County is urbanizing at a much faster rate, but the same idea applies, right? If we start to look at what the costs of actual development are and move forward from there, maybe we can, you know, come up with some ideas that could potentially, you know, still allow for that wonderful mix of housing and residences that everybody wants, but in a way that is, you know, a little bit more cost effective. And so with that, I'll turn it over for discussion, but then pass it on to, we've got Carl here, and he can talk a little bit more about the fiscal impact analysis process and how Compass is working on that. And with that, I can stand for any questions or pass it over. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Council, any questions, or commissioners?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
appreciate a couple questions for you. Thank you, Councilmember. Do we know on average how many households or what that population is that's moving to Ada County from outside the county? What does that number look like? I mean, quick math, when I was with the charts, it looks like from 2010 to 2017, the most recent map, is about 187,000 new people, assuming that everybody who moved to Ada County stayed in Ada County. Just curious if you guys have metrics on households or numbers of people that are moving from outside our county into our county.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavner, I don't know that I know that number off the top of my head. I feel like that number has been produced, so we can look into getting that for you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in receiving that. Thank you. And then, Madam Mayor, additional question. The projections are startling, I think, probably for all of us. One that I kind of keyed in on was the growth in the Sheriff's Department. Obviously, as Meridian has grown, we've built a pretty stellar police department and don't have to rely on the Sheriff's Department for police services like we did in the 80s. One would assume as other municipalities grow, that reliance on the Sheriff's Department would also lessen. So when that number goes up, is that related to the jail? Is that related to just growing the sheriff's department as, along with growth? Help me understand that piece.
Yep, absolutely. So, Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavanagh, so what that would look at is primarily things like driver's licensing, 911 dispatch, the jails, those are all still operated through the county. In terms of patrols, it would depend on, this is sort of the net cost, assuming the current situation, right? But if more cities went to police departments, they could potentially take some burden off the county, but it would put that burden back on those cities, right? So, yeah.
Okay. Madam Mayor, sorry, can we go back? Can you just pull up that slide if you don't mind? I think that'd be helpful, okay? So, Madam Mayor, the projection is then that 2,000, I guess we're looking at about 1,000 additional employees for the sheriff's department. In your mind, the majority of that is DMV non-sworn officer staff. That's what we're hearing.
So when we did the Ada County Master Facilities Plan a couple of years ago, what we did is we broke down all the operational pieces of each office and department and kind of started understanding how much of per 1,000 population need is generated for example, the driver's license or for jail or for, and at the end of the day, as Idaho State Code is written, police departments or not, we are still, at the end of the day, sheriff still has to provide the services throughout the Ada County incorporated and unincorporated territory, is my understanding. So all the projections are based on our existing trend, how we were trending between 2009 and 2017. In terms of per 1,000 population, what do we need for each operation of the sheriff? And so these numbers were derived directly out of that. And so the assumption is that some of the cities will continue to build their own police forces, but it will be at the same level as it is today. So level of service, in other words, is similar.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer.
I hope that if at full build out, we're still having driver's license services at a building, that there's no hope for the country as it is. So hopefully we're able to figure out new technologies and whatnot to avoid having to have all of these people in a DMV
Councilman
at full build out.
Palmer, that is an awesome question. I think we grappled with that as we work in the Master Facilities Plan, and we have, worked with 19 members, all elected officials, as well as department heads, in grappling with technology and some of the new things that will change things. And so our growth projections per 1,000 population actually starts showing some shifts after 2025, and so we have curbed for that, in other words. So yes, you're absolutely right, and we grappled with that as we were looking for technological advancements and other things that would impact the service provision portfolio.
Warms my heart to hear that that's being anticipated. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Lewis.
So if you don't mind, and then we'll keep going, but I wanted to give you just a little bit of flavor in terms of how we got to this place. So we're a newly constituted board as of January, and one of the very first pieces that we had the opportunity to get educated on was the really 2-year process that the county undertook to create a master facilities plan that encompassed all of the elected officials, department heads, et cetera. And as you know, county government's a little bit different in that we have an additional 6 elected officials who we work with who run their own offices. And we were handed these very large black binders that contained all of this myriad of really stark needs that we have for the county. But alongside that was not necessarily a corresponding financial plan for how to pay for it. So this board is now in the process of how do we grapple with that. And when I look at what we're facing in terms of our 3 top priorities right now, being a new jail pod, new coroner's office, and a courthouse expansion, all very necessary issues, we're struggling with how we're going to pay for that in and of itself. So for us, really kickstarting this conversation is about understanding what are the current costs of our growth projections, and if we're fine with those costs, both as a county as well as our partner cities, then we'll all be along our merry ways. But I think, at least at the county level, we know we're going to have to work really hard to meet those. And so we want to engage the conversation around, is there a fiscally different way to grow, perhaps a more fiscally responsible way to grow that would allow us all to save money for our taxpayers. So that's really where we started from, just looking at our own budget, but quickly realized that obviously ACHD is in the mix, the school district, et cetera, and we needed to bring everybody to the table to have that conversation.
Thank you, and I know your accounting team has been visiting our finance department and learning more about our comprehensive financial plan and our capital improvement plan. So we love the collaboration and working together, so thank you. David, I had one more question for you. You talked about an area in Montana. Montana has different land use laws that dictate. I'm not sure our land use laws and our current code could maybe achieve the same thing. Have you done some comparisons in how theirs stands and how they've been able to change the course?
Absolutely. So, Madam Mayor, the goal with the Gallatin County sort of example is not necessarily to look at the policy changes they've made. Obviously, at some point down the line, that's going to have to be research that we do.
That's
in
a
depth.
big piece.
Yes. Right now, the goal is to focus on, or at least our focus was on the way in which they quantified the cost of their development as it stands,
Okay,
and the
thank
way in
you.
which they use that money to look at different scenarios.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Madam Mayor, if I may add, so for October 16th growth conversation, we have invited a couple of national experts that will help us understand some toolbox that are available in front of us and that we can think about as a region and say, yeah, this is something we should think about as a region to achieve the fiscally responsible goal, growth goal for all of us. So we have invited a couple of national experts that will help us kind of understand what other people that are in similar situation, including some in Idaho, have done or have envisioned doing.
So part of that toolbox, will it be have some policy suggestions to it? I know we've gone to the legislature with some policy suggestions, and they haven't even been heard. So will those be part of that discussion in October?
It will be a collaborative conversation, really, and Commissioner
And
Ganchino,
we're just getting started. So I think the opportunity right now is to first start with the fiscal impact piece. And if, as a region, as a county, and all of our entities, we decide we want to continue to pursue that, then it would be the opportunity to link arms and, if need be, go to the legislature. I hear you. I know how difficult that is, but I think we have to get on the same page as a community first.
So you can tell the fiscal impact story first.
Right.
That's great. Well, I appreciate your help with that. Carl?
Good afternoon.
Good
My name's Carl
afternoon.
Miller. Madam Mayor, Meridian City Council, Ada County Commission, thank you for inviting me to participate in this conversation. I'm with the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho, or COMPASS, and we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Ada and Canyon County. Before I talk about fiscal impact, I did want to point out, Commissioner Kavanagh, that we do track a lot of the growth and development trends as well as migration. I'll share that information with your staff, and they can share that with you, if that's all right. So fiscal impact, a little bit about what it is and then how we're going to be using it, is really an analysis of the financial bottom line of land use in the county. All the revenues that come in through development fees and impact fees and property taxes, and then what we commit to when we approve development as far as the different public expenditures that we have through public transportation, public education, municipal services, county services, public works, and so forth. And it really helps to identify and quantify the value and to tell the story about does growth pay for itself. Looking at how much revenue comes in with different types of development patterns, how much revenue is expected based on those development patterns and types of uses, as well as what's the relationship between revenues and costs based on where it is in the county, where it is located in the city. A lot of the work that your city staff have done about the relationship between where services already exist and the amount of cost that it would take to serve those things. And then be able to answer that question, should development be incentivized or disincentivized based, again, on location, what type of development is, and so forth. Again, fiscal impact is more of an informational tool, but it really needs to lead to that implementation tool to be an effective policy. And then it can also answer those things like how will demographic shifts change the expected revenue and costs for a community. As people change over time, they'll expect different housing types and land use patterns. Does that change the amount of money coming in and out of a community? That really all comes down to the bottom line of, does growth pay for itself? Compass has recently worked with your staff, both at the county and the city, as well as stakeholders across the region. And we're working to hire a consultant to do that fiscal impact analysis for us as we, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, work on the long-range transportation plan, Communities in Motion. This one will be called Communities in Motion 25. As we look out over the next 3 decades about what are the transportation infrastructure needs and services that we have in the valley, we also want to tell the story about what those different land use patterns and preferred growth scenarios, what will that mean to our financial bottom line as communities, as cities and counties, and to the people that we serve. So as we look at that preferred growth scenario, this fiscal impact will help tell the story of what is the cost, what are the revenues generated with those different land use patterns. That will be the first step. Upon that, if successful, we'll move into what will that cost to communities and then even at different site-specific land use proposals. But really looking at first, what does that mean to a regional preferred land use scenario. So again, this is work that we've just started on. We'll be hiring a consultant later, actually next month, working with your staff and as other stakeholders to really help identify those revenues and costs and moving forward so we can tell a more compelling story about what is the financial impacts of land use patterns. That's all I have for you. Any questions for me?
Thanks, Carl. I think you're launching a mammoth program or project, and we appreciate your leadership on this. Council and Commission, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the mention at the very end of that was Title 8 and 9 agreements, and just want to make sure that we have that on your radar, that we would like to have a discussion. And it will follow a lot of the discussion that we had with the Ada County Commissioners a couple of years ago with the PowerPoint that we'll send you. And so we'll work with your team to set up a follow-up meeting to discuss that. As you talk about fiscal impacts and cost of growth, the growth in our areas of impact and what design criteria they have with impact fees and those kind of things, and infill, those are areas that we would like to have further discussions on.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having us here and participating in the not only discussion, but I think, we all are committed, at least at this the board setting up here, moving forward and working together, and having these conversations is really critical. Having us look at what is the common vision, if we can begin with the end in mind. I think we had a high number at Compass based on our current comprehensive plans that build out, what was it, 1.4 or 2.4 million? So is that really where we want to be? And so I think for me, having all of us sitting at the table and talking about what's that common vision at the end of build out, and then working backwards towards that, and then also agreeing on the core values. And I think that we all share those core values, and they just maybe haven't been articulated as well as they could have been in the past. And I really appreciate the community engagement that you've had with your community here. You really set the standard and set the bar high.
Well, thank you for picking this up and running with it. We appreciate that leadership. And if there isn't any further business in front of these two bodies, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
move we adjourn our special meeting.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor